say it's in a bit of an uncertain state at the moment. We do have economic growth, and economic growth has been occurring for the last 4 or 5 years. Positive growth, which is good. It's substantially come from the non-resources sector, which tends to mean that the benefits flow out through the economy a little bit more. The resources sector, it's when it goes through there, we know that more of the benefits, as it were, flow through to international corporations. We have seen some strong prices, particularly in gold, in the last few months. That's given quite a stimulus to growth in particularly last year and the latter part of last year, when the gold price went really high, and the beginning of this year, partly thanks to global uncertainty. So people hedge and put their resources into gold. So that does certainly have a good boost to the economy. It also has a flow-on effect in terms of revenue, and to some extent in terms of foreign exchange earnings. But because by the nature of the minerals and oil and gas companies and their ability to hold funds in foreign currency, you don't see it sort of bringing the flow of money back into the kina, as it will. So you don't see it supporting the kina and preventing the drop of the kina as in the same way as funds which are flowing more readily back into the country through the non-resources sector. But nevertheless, it's the strong prices you've seen in cocoa and coffee in the last few years, coffee particularly during 2025. That sort of saw a significant boost. Obviously, the non-resources sector, it's substantial in the overall economy, but those agricultural crops are much less important now than they used to be proportionally, and less important than oil and gas and gold and minerals in terms of foreign export earnings. But they do flow through to ordinary people, the ordinary farmers and traders through the country. So they are disproportionately, if you like, important to the local community and to the economy in terms of direct impact. There's a high expectation of some of these major new resource projects. That expectation has been there for several years. Expectation that some new resource projects will be about to commence. It's always got a bit of a mixed benefit. It does provide during, say, the construction phase of an LNG project. It provides quite a lot of it's obviously major investment, and that provides a lot of new jobs, contracts, economic activity. But it's short-lived, so it's 3-4 year construction phase, and then at the end of that, it tails off again. So the objective there with, say, LNG would be to try and reduce that lumpiness, if you like, where you have a big jump and then a drop-off, so that you then have one project succeeding another. So you have the construction phase for one succeeded by the construction phase for another. So it could be, for example, Papua LNG followed by PNG, or it could be other resource projects as well. Weakening of the currency over several years has got beneficiaries. You've got the exporters of cash crops, for example, tend to benefit because they're seeing a bigger kina income from their sales of their coffee, cocoa, spices, vanilla, whatever. While those who are on fixed incomes in urban areas, for example, see the increased costs of goods and services in the shops, while their pay package is relatively static. So they see higher costs and they don't see the benefits, whereas the benefits are maybe flowing, as I say, to cash income earners from cash crops. They may be providing more of a stimulus for local producers of fresh produce, for example, because imported goods become more expensive, and therefore is more of an incentive to buy local goods. So there may be a stimulation there. So, but each of these things do have winners and losers. Grey listing comes out of a body called FATF, that's the acronym, and it's a mechanism that was set up by the major economic powers worldwide to protect the global financial system. So it's to protect the integrity of the financial system, so there's confidence in the system, and therefore to minimize opportunities for abuse by people trying to launder money. They may, people or businesses that may have acquired money from one source, from maybe illegal activities, from including from the drug trade, or from terrorism, or from just misappropriating money. Powerful leaders who get hold of their nation's resources, which may be income from their mineral resources or oil resources, siphon it into their own accounts using platforms like casinos, using platforms like property transactions, or just shifting money from one bank account to another and trying to make it hard for authorities to trace it. We are put on the grey list because we haven't implemented for the duration that the rules of FATF actually require. So it's likely we'll be on the grey list for a 3-year term because they need, like 3 years of implementation and demonstration. And we would really, it's possible that we could come off the grey list at an earlier stage if we can demonstrate that we're really implementing. But they're not interested so much in just seeing implementation. They want to actually see that we're implementing for the duration, because otherwise, you do a bit of implementation for 6 months or a year, maybe you'll sort of lift it at that stage and go back to business. So they want to see that it's established and entrenched in our system, and then they will lift it. In terms of implications for the general public or for businesses, by and large, you won't see so much change because, as I say, the banks have been strengthening their systems. You've seen delays. You've seen a lot more paperwork over the last period of time. When the banks say, you've got to fill in more papers, not just when you're sending money out of the country, but if you're receiving money from overseas. Before that just flowed through. Now extra paperwork is required. Hopefully it's getting more systematized. People are used to doing it, so it gets more streamlined, and hopefully it won't disturb too much. Nevertheless, some of the newer financial institutions that don't have established corresponding banks and are trying to establish themselves in the international market for foreign exchange transactions, some of them will have probably a lot more work to do to actually convince the other banks that they are genuine and bona fide institutions and have the capability to meet the standard. Because there's a risk the overseas banks don't want to have corresponding arrangements with PNG institutions in a country with a grey listing where we're not seen, the local institution here is not seen to be fully compliant. So they'll want that sort of level of verification. So it's a transitional phase, but hopefully the mechanism and that extra oversight will actually enhance financial management within PNG. So it's not just a case of complying with FATF because those foreign institutions are requiring it, but that we actually see benefits for Papua New Guineans and Papua New Guinean businesses by making sure our systems are more transparent and accountable, and that and therefore that we are able to restrain abuse of public money particularly, but also restrain abuse of hot money that may be going traveling. We will have some work to do because, as you know, we are just launching a new casino. There's a lot of building work going on, and these, as I say, are some of the mechanisms that are used for laundering money. And so you have to be able to verify. So those are mechanisms. You put money into buildings and or into casinos, and you come out and saying this is clean money now. Well, yeah, you have to be able to demonstrate more than that. But it's important that, you know, if we're establishing a casino now, that we make sure that it's properly supervised. This dirty money, as it's called, contaminates the whole financial system. They've raised the bar, they've put in place all kinds of rules for prevention and for tracking abuse. And so those rules then have to be complied with. It requires that all the countries then set in place their own domestic rules and mechanisms, so laws and mechanisms to restrain money laundering, terrorism money, and so on, and mechanisms which can include the police, can include a range of other institutions to be able to prevent, monitor, and police and enforce those rules. So PNG in the mid-2010, so 2014 through to 2016, was actually grey listed because we had none of the rules in place. But we did start putting those rules in place. We started introducing anti-money laundering legislation and some of the regulatory bodies to police those. And during this sort of 2010s and even into the 2020s, we were introducing more legislation, anti-money laundering legislation, legislation for proceeds of crime, for accountability of where your money has come from, so unexplained wealth legislation, as well as legislation for anti-corruption, so the ICAC and so on. So a whole string of legislation was progressively passed, and that enabled us to come off the grey list quite quickly in 2016, I think.